Very warm welcome to today's online conference on levels, foundations, get informed, get inspired, and get started with the EU approach to building sustainably. So from the title already, you can hear we have quite some interesting aspects on the program for today. And it's my honor to moderate the session today. My name is Katharina Farage. And as I said, I will be guiding you through the sessions and also through the question and answer sessions later on. We have a very interesting program that will also give you a snapshot in a moment until 12:30 Central European time today. So we hope that you can stay with us for the next 2.5 hours and listen to a wonderful presentation, get really new learnings, get new insights from the levels universe. Just a few practical information. We have entered this session in a mode where cameras and microphones have been turned off by default. So you are not able to turn your cameras or your microphones on, but of course you're able to listen to what has been presented, and you also are able to interact with us. We're going to do this through the Q&A function. So the chat has been disabled, which is maybe the tool that you usually use in these kind of online meetings, but we have a Q&A function. You find a little icon at the top of your menu bar where it says Q&A. You can click on that button and then you get to put in a question. Different to a chat, you will not see all of the questions submitted, but they will go to the team in the background who will group them and filter them and also arrange them in a way that, of course, we can more easily ask them to our speakers in the session. So please use the function, the Q&A function, put your questions in there because then we can pick them up in the Q&A sessions of today's program. As you've also understood, this event will be recorded and will also be made available afterwards on the social platforms that Levels is using. For the moment, I will just go on with the objectives of today's event. You will see that we really aim with this conference to show how Levels works and how it can be applied at each stage of the building's life cycle. So even if you're new to Levels, this will give you an introduction to what you need to know. Also, we want to show or demonstrate today how Levels helps in aligning construction practices with EU policies. We have also presentations and, of course, discussions around that. We also have a very practical session where we want to give you an idea of how the e-learning program prepares you to start using Levels in case you're considering that in the next near future. And also we want to show you what you can learn and how you can learn to use the calculation and assessment tool, because it does make things easier and also makes your sustainability performance assessment more complete. We do this following the agenda that you will see on the next slide. We actually have our program structured in 3 parts, and we're going to start with the top level view on the role of Levels in the green transition of the built environment in the first part with 2 presentations. And then we're going to go into part 2 where we're diving deeper into Levels by looking at the online tools, like I already highlighted, where we will have 3 different presentations and also plenty of time for questions and answers. And then in the third part, we're going to look into applying Levels by having a presentation on the More Life to Levels project and the experiences around that. Again, we invite also questions for this part of the session. And then we wrap up at 12:30 Central European time. So we all in all have a number of presentations, but also 4 blocks for Q&A. So again, I really encourage you to put your questions in the Q&A function. Now, before we start, I would like you to follow me and answer a Slido question. You can do so by using the QR code, scanning it with your phone or with another device that you have at hand. But of course, also you can follow the link that is, or follow going to slido.com, and then you can follow it there. Easiest is the QR code as a recommendation from me. If you're scanning the code, you will come to our first question. I will still give it a moment for everybody to be able to scan the code and get ready. And then if we move to the question, we have the following question to you. How familiar are you with levels? And you have a couple of answer options. You can choose more than one if you want. So if it's a multiple choice question, I participated in the testing stage. I'm looking into how to apply it, or I'm applying the framework now. I am keen to apply it. I have attended previous levels events. I have looked at the manuals. I've looked at the website. I received a newsletter. I'm a member of the LinkedIn page. I'm completely new to levels. Or I have checked out the e-learning and or the cut. Again, you still have the QR code on the left side in case you still need to scan it. And I encourage all of you to do, because it does give us a little bit of a feeling of today's audience and your previous encounters with levels. I still see a lot of movement, so I'm just going to wait a couple more seconds for everybody to have a chance. I do see a tendency here though, which is very good, but still giving it a few more moments. I still see some little changes, but it doesn't seem to be that our front runner is going to change. So the majority of our participants today are completely new to levels. And that is great, because today's conference is going to give you foundations, the basics, a great overview of the available tools and help mechanisms, but also some really practical insights on how to apply levels. So you found the right place when you want to learn more about levels. That, of course, also counts for everybody that had already a few encounters with levels, because you're getting more information than in previous events, also more information than what's, for example, in the newsletter. So we also welcome everybody that has already some experience with levels, because you will also get more insights, more information, and more inspiration than in what you might already have found online or in the communication material. So there is a little bit for everybody in this event today, and we're very much looking forward to your active participation in the event. Now, moving to the first presentation, it is my honor in the first part, where we're talking about the role of levels in the green transition. So this top level view that I was introducing at the beginning, it is my honor to introduce William Neal, who is an advisor for circular economy at the European Commission. And his work is currently focused on your circular economy in relation to climate, digital technologies, circular business models, employment, and European funding. And today he's going to set the scene for us in relation to the policy context for levels. William, I hope you're with us.
I am, Katharina. Thank you very much. And thankfully, you are allowing me to activate my camera and microphone. That's fantastic to see that we're really hitting the spot with our audience, because I'm really convinced that Levels is a fantastic tool, and one that has huge potential the more people use it. I'll get on with the show, and as I'm very privileged to have the opportunity to open things today. As you said, my name is William Neal. I'm working in the Environment Directorate General of the European Commission as the advisor on circular economy. And I'm going to just set the scene a little bit this morning, give a little bit of the policy context in which we've developed and in which we're now using levels, in particular in respect of climate change mitigation, and also how levels contributes to our European Union commitments to tackle environmental degradation and climate change more generally by encouraging a sustainable built environment. Just a couple of general comments. I think it's important to understand that circular economy isn't just about recycling. When we talk about circular economy, we're talking about keeping materials in use for as long as possible, optimizing that use, making sure that they're used at their highest value, and then when eventually they do have to be recycled, that they are done at scale and maximizing the purity and usefulness of that recycling. So As you might know, we've just had a European election and we have a new European Commission. We continue to be committed fully to circular economy. I don't think we have a choice. In the last 50 years, we've tripled our use of materials. We're using 2.3% more per year. Europe is using about 8 gigatons per year of materials. So we have to use those as effectively as possible. The extraction and processing of materials is driving about 55% of our greenhouse gas emissions. So just in terms of climate, that's super important. We've had several decades of legislation dealing with waste. And now I would say that in the last few years, we've started to move towards a more life cycle approach. We're looking at product requirements and so on, and even looking at how we can promote more sustainable consumption and align our circularity and our sort of consumer legislation through things like the Green Claims Directive and the right to repair. So here you see on the slide the European Green Deal. This has been our guiding light for the last 5 years, and it features, as you can see, several different policy action fields. Overall, a very comprehensive approach to tackling the main drivers of environmental impacts and strain. And the construction sector has played a very important part in this work, as it contributes to quite a few of these action areas. That's basically because construction uses huge quantities of materials and energy. So it contributes not only to the box you can see here on the bottom left on building and renovating efficiently, but also to other areas here, such as the EU climate ambition and circular economy. Through the Circular Economy Action Plan, which has fed into various different parts of the European Green Deal over the last 5 years, we've brought in very groundbreaking approaches such as eco-design and the digital product passport. And I would say that circular economy has really been integral to the implementation of the achievement of our European Green Deal objectives. And in the next Commission, the one we're just starting now over the next 5 years, we're envisaging further action, particularly looking through a Circular Economy Act at how we can get the markets to work better for circular products and services, for secondary materials, and making sure we get to a kind of single market for waste and circular products. And we're also looking to promote investment in circular business, and also make sure that we implement a lot of the legislative progress that we've seen in the last 5 years. So next slide, please. Looking just more specifically at our climate neutrality actions, the European Union adopted a climate law with a target to reach climate neutrality by 2050. And we set out intermediary goals for 2040 to get us onto the right trajectory. And we're trying to make sure that our policies are aligned to achieving those goals. And for that reason, we've set already a greenhouse gas reduction target for 2030 of at least 55% based on a baseline of 1990 levels. And we have our Fit for 55 objective to achieve this, which includes actually specific policies relating to buildings. And this year, the European Commission, we also proposed a reduction target of 90% greenhouse gas emissions by 2040. So why do we focus particularly on the building sector? So we can move to the next slide. As I said, the sector does use an enormous amount of materials, energy and water. If we look at the full life cycle of buildings, as we try to do, going from the extraction, processing and transport of materials to the manufacturing of the construction products, the actual construction itself, the use phase of the building, and then the management of the demolition and the management of the waste. We estimate that about half of all our extracted materials and half of all energy consumed, and about a third of our total water consumption is related to building sector. So also over about a third of our generated waste is construction and demolition waste, going by weight. So this makes the sector obviously very important when it comes to resource efficiency, circularity and emissions savings. This is really why we have that focus. So next slide, please. I talked a little bit about the life cycle approach. On this slide, you can see some of the different stages in that life cycle, from the raw material supply for construction through the use stage to the end of life. And there are emissions, greenhouse gas emissions associated with each of those stages. And to minimize the emissions from the whole life cycle, or what we call the whole life carbon emissions, we need to tackle each of those stages with different measures, rather targeted measures. It's a common misconception that greenhouse gas emissions only really come from the energy consumed in the use phase of the building. Actually, the materials that are used to construct the building are responsible for a huge proportion of those emissions, because so much energy is necessary to extract the materials out of the ground and transform them into construction products. I heard a figure, maybe one of my colleagues who's more of an expert in the area could confirm it. I heard a figure that it takes about 20 years of using a building before you've even equaled the amount of energy that was required to actually build it. So it just goes to show how important that construction phase is, which is also a fairly short, relatively short and defined phase in the life of a building. So one which is very important to get right. So part of the issue is using less virgin materials. That is obviously an important way in which we can reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, or what we call the embodied emissions from the sector. And this potential to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the construction sector has to be looked at also in combination with the energy efficiency of buildings, so the use phase. There are several factors that impact on the supply and the demand of energy and materials, and therefore have an impact on greenhouse gas emissions in the whole life cycle. So we need to look at things like the size of the building stock as a whole. We need to look at the relative quantity of new build. New build obviously requires a lot more material than the renovation of existing buildings. And we need to look at energy and material efficiency, and how we can apply circular means to improve that efficiency substantially. And we need to also look at the carbon intensity of the grid, of the energy grid, for material production processes. So let's look at an example of a fantastic example of circularity in action in building. Here we're looking at just one of an increasing number of good examples that we see in the building sector. So Skanska is a project development and construction group, and in Oslo, Norway, Skanska have been reusing concrete decks from an old government building in the construction of the new part of a hospital. And this has had major impact in reducing carbon emissions and the costs. Concrete decks are really the largest share of greenhouse gas emissions from materials in a new building. They account for about 10% of all the embodied carbon. Embodied carbon is the greenhouse gas emissions that are associated with that production, that extraction, transport and manufacturing stage, so before it's actually going into the building. By reusing the whole hollow core concrete decks rather than bringing in new ones, they were able to save 90% of the embodied carbon linked to that concrete. It also, of course, reduces the demolition waste and the associated costs and problems with that. And concrete decks are a significant part of the total waste in Norway. About 10% of waste in Norway comes from concrete waste. So this is quite a substantial saving, especially if it can be rolled out. The holodecks are actually standardized, mostly standardized, so they are theoretically removable, and there are a lot of them as well. So there is a great potential here if this can be rolled out more generally, with, of course, fantastic implications for achieving our climate goals. So you can see here, integrating circular thinking does lead to major efficiencies, but it's still considered very innovative. And what we really need to be able to do is to roll out these practices more widely so it can really have that impact and potential. Next slide, please. So that was just one example, but it really shows what is possible and the wider potential for material savings and carbon savings in the sector. And we know from studies done by the United Nations International Resource Panel and the European Environment Agency that the sector could reduce its embodied carbon emissions by 60 to 80% by 2050. So a huge saving. In order to tap that potential, we need actions both at the level of the stock and at the level of individual buildings. And it's important to apply life cycle thinking directly to individual building and renovation projects. It's not that easy to be circular, to go circular in a linear world, a world where the markets are linear and thinking is linear. And that's why we have developed the levels framework. It's a framework that provides indicators and a methodology to assess and report on the sustainability performance of buildings, considering that full life cycle. And levels is actually being integrated into quite a number of European Union policy initiatives. It's helping us to bring that life cycle thinking into various policies. So, for example, if you look at the energy performance of buildings directives, which was adopted in 2024, this will introduce gradually minimum energy performance standards for non-residential buildings and set a building target to increase the average energy performance of residential buildings nationally, and require computation of the whole life carbon of buildings based on levels. If you look at the new voluntary green public procurement criteria for office buildings, this is also very much modelled on the levels methodology. If you look at the sustainable finance taxonomy, which is a set of objective criteria for measuring substantial contribution to circularity, which we're using to leverage preferential financial or private investments. This also uses levels indicators linked to energy and material use, and it uses this holistic life cycle approach to buildings. And also, if you look at the revised construction products regulation of April 2024, this also includes mandatory harmonized data on carbon footprints for all construction products that are placed on the European single market, and that information can then be used to calculate rather the whole life carbon of a building. So you can see that levels is being integrated into our policies. We continue to work with policy development on using levels indicators to bring in life cycle thinking. So with that, I say thank you. I hope that's set the general scene, and I'd like to hand over to my expert colleagues, starting with Estelle, who is going to explain to you more about what levels actually is, and how it can benefit you as a company, as somebody involved in the building sector, and how you can use it. How you can use it not only to support you in improving sustainability performance of your buildings, but also prepare you for our future policy developments. So thank you very much.
Thank you, William. Estelle, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Katarina. Thank you very much, William, for setting the scene for the context of levels. And good morning, everyone. So my name is Estelle Elisa Goyen. I work at the European Commission at the Directorate General for Environment, where I'm a policy officer working on circularity, including sustainable buildings. So in this context, I'm working on levels, and I'm going to try to give you an overview of what levels is and what it is for, how it can help you. If we can have the next slide, please. So, to be very concrete, levels is it's a framework of 16 sustainability indicators to help you assess and report on 16 different aspects of sustainability on your buildings project. It was conceived by the European Commission as a common language at EU level to agree on what sustainability means for buildings. It was developed over numerous years with the help of the sector and tested by the sector as well. And it is based on the best practice industry standards. So it's been a common reflection over many years. In terms of scope, this framework of indicators is applicable to both residential and office buildings. For now, this is the types of buildings on which we can apply the levels indicators. They're also applicable on new build, new construction, and on renovation projects. And I will explain a little bit more later why these indicators can be so flexible. Finally, we've developed the levels framework, the indicators, and the methodology behind them as an entry-level tool for the mainstream market, meaning as a tool that can be easily learned and used by any building professional in the sector. So we provide a lot of material online and a lot of detailed explanation to make the implementation, the application of levels as easy as possible and help you assess and report on sustainability. And I will also give you an overview of these online tools. If we can move to the next slide. Thank you. So as William explained before, it is very important to have a holistic view of the building's life and to adopt a whole life cycle when you consider the environmental and climate impact of it. And so in the levels framework, we've integrated the full life cycle of the building, and we've organized the indicators around 6 big objectives of sustainability. We call them macro objectives. So they're sustainability macro objectives, as we call them. And here they are on the screen. We have the objective of whole life carbon, resource efficient material flows, efficient use of water, health and comfort for the occupants, adaptation and resilience of the building to climate change, and life cycle cost and value of the building. So behind these 6 macro objectives, we will find the 16 indicators. If we can move to the next slide. Thank you. So this table presents to you the 16 levels indicators. On the second column, macro objectives, you will find the 6 sustainability macro objectives that cover the whole life cycle of buildings. And to the right, you will find the indicators that are underpinning each of them. Some macro objectives, like number 3, efficient use of water resources, have only one indicator, the use stage water consumption. But others, like number 2, resource efficient and circular material life cycles, has 4. Can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So what's interesting with these indicators is also that they can be used at different stages of the building's project. Hence, the name levels that we gave to the framework. The first level of application of the indicators is level 1. It is the very beginning. It is the conceptual stage where the building developers start to think of the concepts of the building, and it is the indicators here are more qualitative. They will be composed, for instance, of checklist of sustainability concept depending on the topic of the indicator at hand. Then you have the level 2, which is the more detailed design phase and the actual construction. Here, the indicator will be a little bit more quantitative. And finally, we have the level 3, where the indicator will become, which is handover to the client and monitoring, and where the indicator will be both quantitative and qualitative to assess different aspects of this post-construction monitoring. And so important to explain is that the levels framework is a purely voluntary tool. You can use whichever indicator you want to use and you deem pertinent for your building project, and you can use these indicators at any level 1, level 2, or level 3, that makes sense for your project. So this tool is completely flexible. It's been developed to help you assess, think of sustainability aspects in your project. It's also important to mention that Levels is not a certification scheme. We do not, in the methodology underpinning the indicators, we do not set threshold that have to be met that will grant you a stamp of approval. It is a much more flexible tool, adaptable to your needs. Can we get the next slide, please? Thank you. So as I was mentioning before, Levels, the framework of 16 indicators, has been developed as an entry-level tool for the mainstream market. So we want it to be accessible as much as possible. For this reason, we've developed an array of material, resources to help you get started understanding and getting started with Levels. So we have a website, the Levels website. Maybe the link can be posted by the team in the chat, with a step-by-step introduction, and e-learning composed of several modules, interactive ones, to help you understand each indicator, a calculator and assessment tool to help you complete the calculations that are part of the indicators, and user manuals that go into a depth of detail on each of them. Next slide, please. Thank you. So if you're very new to Levels and you're looking at getting started, we recommend that on the website, you first look at the overall introduction to understand exactly what Levels is about, what are the indicators and macro objectives, what types of building professionals would need to be involved, and so on. And once you get a hang of that, we recommend that you move to the online tools. Finally, once you've completed the e-learning that is relevant for the indicators you want to use, then we recommend that you download our user manuals, which are the backbone of the methodology and are much, much more detailed. Next slide, please. Thank you. So you will see that on the e-learning, you have the possibility to select exactly which indicators you are interested in. You can also select a learning journey. So for instance, if you're particularly interested in sustainable finance, the e-learning will propose to you a learning pathway that's adapted to your needs, that's more relevant to your needs. And you will find little quizzes to test your knowledge. You will find case studies and a lot more. Regarding the calculation and assessment tool, we'll have a dedicated presentation later on, but you'll see that it's a tool to make it easier for you to complete the assessments that are behind the indicators to help you compute them. And finally, next slide, please. We have the user manuals, and I added here because I wanted to ask the team to please post in the chat the link to the e-learning, to the computing and assessment tool, and to the user manuals, and we'll go into them in the next presentation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Estelle, for this very good presentation of giving us, an introduction to levels after, of course, William's policy scene setting. And we really, I think for our participants, of course, to really understand where they can find different tools, different helpful resources and the like. So thank you for introducing that. And as Estelle has highlighted, we're going to go into some of them in a bit more detail in the next part. Before we do that, I would like to ask a second question with the help of our Slido tool. And for that second question, we would like to ask you, sorry, I'm going to give it again, like a couple of seconds for you to connect, but we would like to ask you, do you have any experiences in assessing water consumption in buildings? Why are we asking that? Because in the next part, we're going to go a little bit more into the indicator 3.1 of levels, which deals with water consumption in buildings. So we would like to, again, before we go into these presentations and in the details, get a bit of a feeling from you where you stand on the experience in assessing water consumption in buildings. We have the answer options of no, never done that. Yes, but only reading my own personal water bills. Yes, limited experience with building water consumption assessment. And yes, significant experience with building water consumption assessments. So where do you find yourself on that spectrum? Obviously, this is a single choice answer because it's very exclusive answers here. And we would like to get a bit of a feeling from where you stand on that spectrum so that also our presenters in the next part know where to start from and which experience level they can expect. I still see some answers coming in, but I think also here we have a clear front runner. So we have, I would say, a good share of the participants today have never had any experience or relationship to assessing water consumption in buildings. Again, it's not a requirement to understand the next presentations. So very much also appreciate your honesty on this question, and it gives the next presenters definitely an indication on where to start. But there's also a number of participants that have significant or limited experience with building water consumption assessments. So there is a bit of experience floating around amongst our panel of participants. And then we also have the brave ones that, yes, we have experience, but with our own water bills. So, which is a very good start as well. And I'm sure that the next couple of presentations will get you a bit closer to understanding what water consumption assessments are and also how levels can actually support that. So thank you for answering that poll. We're now moving into the second part of our session, which is the part on embracing a whole life cycle approach with levels indicators, particularly focusing on an overview of the online tools that also Estelle already started to introduce in her presentation. We have in this part a number of presentations again, and also the opportunities for you to ask questions through the Q&A function, which we will then pick up after the presentations, after each presentation. The first presentation that we have is a joint presentation, and Estelle is going to continue with a couple of more slides in a moment. And then she will be joined by Manfred Fuchs, who is a senior policy assistant working in the Directorate General for Internal Market, Industry, Entrepreneurship and SMEs, where he's really mainly involved in the technical standardization work at EU level, covering environmental and consumer protection. Again, Estelle is going to start this presentation and it will then hand over to Manfred. And after this presentation, we'll have a chance to ask both of them a few questions. So please keep them coming in the tool. But Estelle, first the floor is to you to continue your introduction also on the overview of guidance for users in relation to levels.
Thank you, Katarina. So indeed, moving from the first part that set a high-level overview of EU building policy and how levels sit in this context. In the second part, we're moving to more detailed guidance of a more detailed overview of the guidance that we provide for users. So if we can move to the next slide, please. And so I'm going to just take a few minutes before my colleague Manfred takes the floor to explain to you what we provide here. So we've already mentioned the introduction on the website. We've mentioned the e-learning. We've mentioned also the computing and assessment tool. The user manuals. I also forgot to mention that we have very interesting publications and videos on our website that can help you also get a hang of different aspects of levels. So zooming in now on the user manuals, where to find them. So we've posted in the chat on Teams the link. So if on another day you're looking for them, they are on the Levels website. You will find a box with user manuals. The link will redirect you to the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, which is a research center that helped develop Levels and its indicators, that it's hosting the user manuals. And we have three main umbrella user manuals. The first two ones, User Manual 1, User Manual 2, are horizontal documents that provide a transversal explanations and introduction. And then the umbrella of User Manual 3 will provide indicator-specific information. And we have several under them. So first one, User Manual 1, general introduction to levels. Why levels, why these indicators, who is involved, what will you be expected to do, general ideas. You can expect a 20, 30 pages read. Then you have user manual number 2, which is going into more detail already, giving explanation on exactly how to set up a project with levels. You'll get more details. It's useful when you're trying to use levels on a real project. You're getting there in practice, and it will give you explanation on how to describe your building, for instance, things that are part of the levels methodology. And finally, this umbrella of user manual 3 with different sub-manuals for indicators. Here again, as I was mentioning, Levels is a very flexible tool. You can use the indicators that you choose at the levels you choose, and these manuals reflect this exactly. So you can you can choose and read the manuals that are relevant to you. Each of them can be read independently, so you can focus on just one indicator. You're not going to miss out on any part of the methodology. And it gives you detailed, very concrete, hands-on information and guidance on how to report on this indicator, what you need for it. And often the manual is going to give you access to complementary files, like for instance, Excel sheets that are going to be useful to complete the assessment. They will serve as template, for instance. The indicator specific manuals that are under the user manual number 3 are always the same. At the beginning, you will find the common elements of how does this manual work, what's the structure of it, where to find the information. Then you'll get the terms and the definitions that are going to be used for this specific indicator. You will get an introduction briefing. So what is this indicator measuring? Why do we measure this? At what stage of the project are we going to be implementing this indicator? What's the unit of measurement? What the scope, etc. And then you will have specific instructions for the different levels. So as we mentioned, level 1 is the very beginning, the conceptual phase. It's more qualitative assessment. So you'll have, for instance, a checklist of concepts. And in any case, you'll get a step-by-step explanation on what is expected and the reporting format. And then you will have level 2, level 3, which become more quantitative. And again, you will have detailed information on the purpose of this level of application. You'll have step-by-step instructions, what you need to make the assessment, who should be involved also in the building projects team, what type of professionals should be involved to make this assessment, the reporting format, and so on, and at the end, any additional detail that can be useful. Now that we've talked a little bit about the user manuals, I'm going to hand the floor to my colleague Manfred, who is going to give you more detail on one indicator in particular. Here you go, Manfred.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. We have already said we are looking into water, and for everybody who said, well, I didn't have so much experience, don't worry. It's not rocket science in the first place, and secondly, we are not making it with levels more complicated than necessary. It's more to provide you with ideas and tools for this. So therefore, in reality, just to repeat what Estelle said, there are arguments why you should do it. The arguments are not only to convince you that you should use the indicator, it's also in particular for practical users. For example, the architects, if they have to present their case and their ideas to the building owner, to the people who are finally then thinking and investing in water efficiency, that there are good and solid arguments how to do this. And with this, we are going with the next slide directly into the topic itself. Again, not rocket science. We are talking here about basic elements, but these basic elements have to be in the right format so that you can actually use them properly and can actually make gains out of it. Some of the things that I'm explaining to you right now in a very short presentation will be repeated then at the later stage of today when we come to the calculation tool of levels, where you then see a little bit clearer which elements should be included. But the baseline here is we have the different applications. We have the toilets, we have the taps, we have the showers, we have the washing machines, dishwasher, etc., etc. And we want to ensure that in the end, the water consumption, water scarcity becoming more and more an issue in many member states is limited and as efficient as possible. Therefore, you have on one hand the product information. Secondly, you have then with the product information the possibility to calculate your daily needs or the yearly needs depending on where you are going, and up to a certain extent, but that's a little bit more tricky, you have to identify practically occupant behavior. So might this be professional people who are cleaning office buildings? Might it be practically individuals in apartments? There is also an element that you shouldn't forget. It's the human factor. How often do I use these elements? Next slide, please. Now, the whole thing goes into water consumption that is provided from outside. And as I said, that's the point where the whole thing gets complicated because we are in more and more regions of Europe looking for facing water scarcities. So this is step number one. It's important to identify, okay, I have these different elements. I have the water meter says, okay, I'm using so much water, but manufacturers are providing this information too. And this is the part that will then feed into the calculation tool or into your own individual calculations, what is actually feeded into the system. On the next slide, we are already seeing here more information that is coming from the manufacturers themselves. So they are providing specific information. And on the next slide, we are going then to the points. Yeah, so thank you very much. To the point where the water sources can also be much more sophisticated. So we are not only depending on the supplier from the outside, we can also try to harvest rainwater, to use grey water, different elements. However, we are trying to keep this in levels and in cut relatively simple. The important thing is not that you are starting highly complex calculations on this, but to see where can I actually add improvement instruments in my design. So be aware, we are talking here about relatively startup sets. There could be more, and I will come to this in levels, more improvements in the future. Next slide, please. Here we have exactly then the element of where and how to identify additional elements of reducing the waste of water and the use of water itself. However, that depends, of course, very much on the country and therefore possibilities. And therefore, and last slide, keep in mind, it looks complex at the beginning. It's in levels itself a rather simple approach. And with the calculation tool, I will show you that there is even additional help that you don't have to collect and get all the data automatically by yourself. A lot of work has been done in the manuals and has been then transferred into the calculation tool. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manfred. And of course, we're going to hear you back later with exactly the calculation and assessment tool. But for the moment, I would like to also bring Estelle back and use this opportunity for a short Q&A session with both of you. So thanks everybody for putting in questions. We're receiving quite a number, so we do have to filter and see how many we can actually cover in the time that we have. But maybe just to kickstart, if you don't mind, Estelle, the first question going to you, because it's very exciting to hear, of course, that there are the levels manuals will be updated or are being updated, because I know that this has been a question in our previous sessions and webinars. But could you share maybe a bit more or some insights, which indicators on what aspect will be updated?
Yes, thank you, Katharina. So indeed, even though as of now there is no plan to further develop levels, it is very important for the European Commission to ensure that the framework remains updated, it remains user-friendly and fit for policy development. So we are updating a number of indicators, and we are planning a publication of these updates in early 2025. And so I can give you a quick overview of what that could be. For instance, so we're going to be updating indicators 1.2 life cycle global warming potential, 2.1 bill of quantities, materials, lifespans, 2.2 construction and demolition waste and materials, 2.3 design for adaptability and renovation, 2.4 design for deconstruction, reuse and recycling, 4.3 lighting and visual comfort, 4.4 acoustics and protection against noise, and finally 6.1 life cycle costs. And so the updates can be sometimes quite minor or a little bit more extensive. This will depend on the indicator. Sometimes we're going to update the tiers that are used in the computation, the methodology. Sometimes we will add more and develop more on level 2, detailed design and construction, level 3 monitoring. Sometimes we will update the scoring system and so on. So it will depend exactly on the indicator, but we've been working on it with great attention for the past years, and we're nearing a publication. Of course, you will be informed. You can follow us on our LinkedIn group. You can follow the newsletter. If you follow us on these platforms, you'll be the first to know when they're published.
No, thank you very much. Indeed, there are many channels to stay up to date, and of course, we're very much inviting participants to sign up or follow them, respectively. Estelle, maybe just a follow-up question, and I know that you've said it, but in our audience, there is the fear that levels might become mandatory at some point. So maybe just a quick confirmation from your side that that's not the case.
All right. So the answer here is in two parts. The first one is levels as a framework of 16 indicators is not mandatory. It is a purely voluntary tool. As I was mentioning before, you can pick and choose the number of indicators that you wish you can implement this indicator at the level that you wish, depending on the building type, the building project, and so on. Now, levels and some indicators of levels are being increasingly used in EU policy, EU legislation. So for instance, as William was mentioning before, the indicator 1.2, lifecycle global warming potential, which is the whole life carbon emissions, is used in the new Energy Performance of Buildings Directive that was adopted in April 2024, and that requires, for certain types of building, there's going to be a progressive implementation, requires a calculation exactly of this, the whole life cycle carbon emissions. And the methodology behind this legislation is going to be based on the levels indicator. Similarly, for the EU taxonomy, which is it's a classification system of economic activities that are deemed sustainable. They are in this EU taxonomy 13 construction activities, and many of them, are backed by levels indicators. So if as a building project, you want to comply with this green activity that is laid out in the EU taxonomy, you're going to have to use a few levels indicators to demonstrate your compliance. So there are a few examples, and it's increasing, of the integration of the levels indicators in specific pieces of legislation related to buildings. So even though using levels is not, as a whole, is not mandatory, starting to use it will help you align with just adopted and upcoming legislation. I hope that was clear.
I think that was very clear. So you made it very clear for the levels framework itself and the indicators themselves that they're not mandatory, but there are links to policy. And as you said, following these indicators or applying them can help with aligning to these policies. So thank you very much for that answer. Manfred, I know that we hear more from you later, but still, I do want to also give the floor to one of the questions received for you, and specifically the question on how will the European Commission make second-hand or bio-based materials more competitive against the more traditional virgin materials?
Well, actually, levels is not promoting one thing or the other. It's a calculation tool and a design tool in the end. So in reality, it's more how efficient your design is to make a certain product or a certain material more attractive to be used, and this product is actually providing an added value. So do not consider this as a tool where you get special bonuses later than in cuts or in levels as such for specific products. As Estelle said, we are not here giving benchmarks or giving a rating system as such. It's an instrument how to provide information and how to use it in your calculation. So CAT is falling short on this. However, levels and CAT are actually providing possibilities to use exactly useful information in the calculation itself. So sometimes the bio-based products might have a better performance, and this can be expressed. But we are not saying automatically, forget about the performance, it's only important that it's bio-based. This doesn't exist. We are talking here about the building, we are talking here about construction works. We are talking here about a performance that has to be addressed no matter where the material is coming from.
Thank you very much. And I know also our participants, of course, are looking very much towards your next presentation on then the cut and more specifications on there. So you already gave us a bit of a teaser there of what to expect in that session. I want to thank both of you for the moment. There were plenty more questions, but we do have other presentations still on the agenda for today. So I would like to thank both of you for now. And I would like to give the floor next to Almudena Rodero, who is an environmental associate environment consultant at AROP, where she works on sustainability certification since many years, and she has been the project manager for the Levels e-learning program since December 2022. And of course, that makes her perfect for giving us an introduction into the Levels e-learning program and how to best use this. So Almudena, the floor is yours.
Hello, thanks the European Commission again for allowing me to participate in this webinar. During this session, I am going to present a journey through the e-learning tool with an overview of the structure and how it works. The e-learning provides a synthesized way of starting with levels before reading the full manuals. And to ensure a successful learning experience, the Levels e-learning program was tested, incorporating feedback from a geographically diverse range of professionals across the continent before going live. Please, next slide. We have developed this e-learning tool to support the use of levels to assess and report on sustainability performance of buildings. It's like the first step before the first step recommended before going to the full manuals reading. The next slide, please. I'm going to use today with this journey the indicator for efficient use of water resources. And I'm going to do it live once I have permissions to share my screen, if the moderation team could let me share my screen. But I am going to show you which is the learning recommended when you start with levels. The first, Inspire. If you are not familiar with levels, if you are new, please go first to the Levels website as a first step. Then Discover. Through the e-learning, you can go through the module of the introduction, which will help you to understand the different main objectives. And as Estelle has mentioned, these initial user manuals too, in order to define which are the objectives specifically for your project and pick and choose which is the levels indicators that you are going to follow and integrate in your project. And then Learn itself with the different modules for the different indicators. And as you can see in the screen, this is the journey for the indicator for water that I'm going to share right now my screen so that we can start with the journey. I think that you already see my screen, right? Well, the first step is to know which is the way of connecting with the e-learning. There are two different ways. One is through the Levels initial web page. You can find the e-learning tools here in this link, where you click and access the tool, or directly through the web page of the EU Academy. You can access directly. This is the portal for training. As I am in Spain, automatically choose the Spanish, but you can choose the language that you prefer. And then you can click on the search bar. You can click on levels and it will appear the tag for the levels course, or you can explore by topic. The levels course is under the energy and climate and the environmental topic. Once you are in the web page of the initial web page of the learning pathway, you can see here the different course details, the target audience, the learning objectives, and some initial information of the different modules that are included in the learning. You need to click, well, as if you, first step, you need to have a login. if you are first in the web page of the EU Academy, this is going to you need a login in the EU, but it is very easy to create that one. And then once you are logging, you can access directly to the course. And as a first step, this will say enroll. As I have already done the course, it appears resume. And if you click on that, well, this is the login redirection. It takes a little while. Well, it appears again in Spanish, but you can click. There are 6 languages that are available, the course. In this case, I am presenting the English version. You can see here the different modules. As a first step, this is the learning journey. The learning journey is a document. I'm going to open it so you can see it. This is a recommending pathway that we have created in order to let you establish which are going to be your indicators for your project. As Estelle has mentioned, Levels is a very flexible tool that lets you pick and choose whatever is the sustainability aspect that you would like to incorporate in your project, and also which level of detail do you want to integrate. So here is a recommended learning journey according to different priorities in your project: for circularity, sustainable finance, resilience, global warming, and occupational welfare. And if you click in the different priorities, you can see which are the indicators that are more directly related to the topic. But you can follow whatever is the indicator that you prefer to implement in your project. The first step, recommended step, as I mentioned in this journey with the overall slide, is to do the introductory module. You can click here in introduction and in this link. This introduction is connected and synthesize the user manual too, where you could understand an overview of the different indicators, the different macro objectives, and also to let you establish which are going to be your objectives in your project. I'm going to show you as an example through this webinar, the module 3, which is the efficient use of water resources. You need to click in this link, module 3. It will appear this first screen, and then you click on enter. It takes some seconds. All the modules had been designed with the same structure and the same contents. Always it appears an initial page where you can see the name of the macro objective and the different indicators that are inside and associated with this macro objective. In this case, as the water only has one, so only appears one. And also there is always this contents bar where you can see the content of the module, and you can go directly to the page that you are interested with, and everything all the modules has the same content. Also, you have this help bar that provides you an overview of which are the different icons. I don't know what it is not working now. This is normally the technology issues in the real life. Well, but I'm going to show you the different pages. When you click in the indicator, the first content would be the introduction, the aim of the indicator as a summary, and then you can click on this arrow in order to go through the next screens. In this screen, you can see what do you need to start with this indicator in 2 things. In one side, which are the levels, manuals, and documentation and tools that are available for this specific indicator, and in another that will appear the recommended links and to the user manuals and the calculator and tools for the indicator, and some other reporting tables. Then what do you need for this indicator? What kind of information you may need in your project to have at the same time of reviewing your project, and in order to integrate this indicator, this sustainability criteria in your project. As for example, here the water consumption devices, some manufacturer cash sheets, maybe the plant showing the landscape and vegetation zones, all the different water consumption features. Then what do you measure? This always explain in a synthesized way, which is the unit of measurement. In this case, the cubic meter per occupant per year during the use phase of the building life cycle. Then in the next slide, who is the responsible, depending on the levels, as Estelle has mentioned, and I have recap, levels is very flexible. You can choose whatever indicator you prefer in your project, but also the level of detail that you want to implement through the different indicators. You can decide maybe implement only the level 1, which is the conceptual design. It is like a checklist of the different design aspects to be discussed within the project team. Then detailed design and construction assessment, which is more using the calculation according to more project details. And then if you are in the in-use phase, some water meters and counting, which is the real consumption. Through these icons, you can see the different stakeholders that are more involved in the different phases for the 3 levels that could be applicable for this indicator. Then there are the next slides are for the process in each of the levels, level 1, level 2, and level 3. In order to guide you very clearly of what are the steps that you need to follow in order to integrate the different levels in your project. For example, in this case, in the level 1, so there are different design aspects to be considered that are explained during the process of the e-learning. After all the levels 1 in all the indicators, there are a link through the reporting format that needs to be used at the end of integrating the indicator. And we have included some tables with examples of the water design concepts and the type of description that could be included in your project. Then, well, the next slide and screens are for the level 2, how to use the water calculator in this case. And then the level 3. After all the levels, the process, we have included the reference standards. This is a summary of which are the main standards that are mentioned through the user manual document. So you can see it in a recap in one place. Other, a glossary of terms that are included in the user manuals and could help you to understand better the objectives of the indicator. And then some quizzes in order to self-assess which is the type of knowledge that you have obtained through the learning process, and also if you would like at the same time to read the manuals. And then at the end of each indicator, we have created a case study with like a hypothetical building, office building in Madrid, where we have include information of the different levels and how to, as an example, how to complete the different information and the calculations. And also at the end, we have included always some useful tips. If your project is a residential or if your project is a renovation, and also some related tip indicators, as we have been working for sustainability since more than 17 years now. Some tips that we have found while in the process of integrating this particular concept of water in the projects. And also finally some other related indicators that could help you to see some other connections. Maybe you are more focused in one place in the water, but then you realize that there are other connections and you want to read and learn more for other indicators. And that's all.
Thank you so much, Amodena. And also, I really appreciate the idea of a walkthrough so that you also really see where you click and what you click and also how you change languages, for example. So a very practical introduction. Thank you so much for that. I would like to use this Q&A session. Sorry, it seems like there was a bit of a technical hiccup, but Almudena, I would love to ask you a couple of questions if that's all right. And the first one I would have, which is the recommended path in the e-learning? I mean, you did show us, you used this walkthrough, which was very appreciated from our side, but is there a destined path? Is there one to follow? What's your view on that? And I think you're back as well. Good.
Yes, sorry. Yes, well, we have included the e-learning program more or less has a duration around 6 hours and a half, more or less, but it takes some time. Also, it gives you the flexibility to include, enter into the e-learning, do something, and then come back because it's going to show you which is the percentage that you have done. But we have included this learning journey recommendation just in case to guide you in which indicators may you be more interested depending on the topic and priorities. So as the first step, I will recommend to look at this learning journey and have an overall view of which are the indicators and the topics, and then select which indicator do you want to learn about.
Okay, and is it mandatory or is it recommended to read the manuals before entering the e-learning?
Well, the process that we have selected for learning about the levels is first be inspired by the levels website because there is a lot of introductory information there, and then discover the e-learning and the module 0, which is the introduction, which is a synthesized way of understanding the user manual too. So you can see the overall view of all the indicators and know how to build to develop a building plan according to levels, and then start exploring with the different indicators that you are more focused on.
Okay, perfect. And for all of us that are very much hands-on and practically oriented, which is the most practical section of the e-learning?
We have tried to do a lot of practicality during the whole e-learning in order to be a more simple way than starting with PDFs documents as are a lot of documentation in the user manuals. But the more practical is the last part of each module, which is each indicator, which are the case studies where we have tried to put an example of one hypothetical building through the different levels, implementing the different levels.
Okay, and these hypothetical buildings, I guess they are also of different nature, right? So maybe also looking into different kinds of buildings.
We have followed the same hypothetical building for all, just to have some kind of connection between the different indicators, and it is an office building in Madrid.
Perfect. Thank you, Almudena, and also thank you for responding to those additional questions. And again, for the walkthrough through the e-learning materials. We're going to continue our journey, if you wish, through the support tools provided. And we're going to go back to Manfred to go to the calculation and assessment tool, now with a bit more details and also with more specifications on the technical implementation. So Manfred, the floor is back to you.
Thank you very much. Well, now with a lot of background information and a lot of training, it's still the point, what do I do with all this information de facto when I design my building and later when I assess the actual performance of the building? Now, like a lot of the other tools that you have seen, the whole idea was to provide some additional support. The calculator that you saw on the front page was exactly a little bit, this is helping your calculations, this is helping you that you don't have to go back to documents and try to find which climatic zones, which water uses do I have. So a lot of the information that you get practically in the manuals that you will see partly in the practical examples, this is already included here in this calculation tool. So the general idea is exactly for people who don't want to make their own Excel tables, who are also under time pressure to do this. Let's provide a relatively simple tool in using all the levels indicators. Levels is not extremely complex because it should be a bottom-up part. CAD is also actually aiming for somebody who doesn't have a lot of time, who shouldn't do a lot of complex calculation, but actually doing these calculations to a large extent already in the system. However, one of the things that I want to mention right now here is that CAD was developed at the stage where we said, okay, we are presenting levels. We will see how much levels will attract interest within the Commission, outside the Commission. How is it used? So therefore, levels was kept CAD was actually kept in a relative basic structure. It's the taxpayers' money that we are investing here. And now we are seeing that with the acceptance and with the interest here, that we are moving then to an upgrade of the system. But I will come to this at a later stage. Next slide, please. What we are doing here is de facto you get the different steps. You see them on the screen in specific boxes. You can already collect specific information, specific numerical data, and put it in the CAD because it's already provided in the system. And two important things here. We have the possibilities in the end, level 2, to compare 3 different options, which I call here 3 different projects, to see, okay, which of the possibilities are actually the most interesting one for my specific project. One additional thing here is the data is stored for some time, but not forever. So one of the ideas was to say, okay, you are working on this, or you just move into cuts and you see what is this tool doing? Is it helping me? Is it not helping here? Then you move out and you forget about the project. Then after 2 years, we automatically delete it. However, if you want to keep the data, every time you go into a project, you do something in there, the clock is ticking again, and practically you can keep this information, learning from the projects and from your previous solutions for a very long time. Next slide, please. This I have not really, I have to admit, I have not updated the users. The number has increased from the last presentation. However, one of the things that we did was asking you when you join CAD, so you move into the system itself, we are talking about and asking for 2 specific information. On one hand, your profession, and the second, the countries where you are practically doing your projects. The point was not the big brother approach. The idea was here actually to see, are we missing certain interest groups? Are we targeting the right groups? And how does it look like when we are looking also at the interesting countries? So are we getting countries where existing schemes are already there, or are we also reaching the countries where no official approach was taken so far, and it's actually helping architects and other stakeholders really to move into sustainable design. As you can see here, we have definitely reached really the people. We are talking here about the practical tool. So exactly the people who are doing the design are also the majority compared to the others. So that seems to be relatively raising the right interest. We can also see from the countries that in some countries there is nothing specific officially. So therefore also helping hopefully the architects and the authorities here really to include life cycle thinking. But also Germany and France are here, on one hand because they are relatively large countries, but on the other hand it's also a point that shows that there is interest even with existing systems, and we are reaching really a topic that is interesting for practitioners in the European Union. Next slide, please. With this, we go now directly into the water consumption. So we're following the whole part, and you get a lot of information here. The problem with this information is, what on earth should I do with it? So we have here the consumption rates, we have usage factors. These are normally things that coming from information that you can either get from the product manufacturer or in your own calculation. And then you come to the daily consumption per occupant. This is the information you get from the manuals. Now, how to do this in practice with the cut lever. Next slide, please. So the main things are logical anyway. So you have your project, you select the life cycle stages that you want. You are choosing indicators. You don't have to use all of them. Like in the levels in general, the concept was here copied, of course, that you only used the indicators that are interesting for you and where you have enough information to provide this. So you are not forced to select everything. The same goes for the level of the levels. So if you have, in some cases, interest in something, but there is not enough information, you want to do something, nevertheless, to express what you have done here, then you choose level 1. You go for another indicator in the same project, and you say, okay, here I have a lot of robust data. I want to use this here for the calculation of the performance. Then you can use level 2 or level 3. So you have practically the flexibility in the system to move in whatever direction you want, depending on what you have available. Next slide, please. Now you enter the system, and there is, of course, one point. You have a calculation tool, and still there could be things that a practical user, I'm talking also about myself, sometimes sitting in front of a screen that says tick here, and it's actually not what I really wanted to do. To understand the tool and to get more information, next slide, please, you get also a support document. So not to confuse with the manuals for levels itself, this is a user manual for CAD. And this we have now in more and more languages. In the meantime, you see it on the last slide, it says 19. We have fortunately upgraded this and have nearly all of the official languages of the European Union. The CAD tool itself is still in English, but to see if you have understood correctly what is required here, the manuals are in all official languages, so that should help also to work with the tool. These are the starting points. Now we go into the project. You're selecting your projects, and here you can see already there are some icons with an eye, so information. You get more information that you find also in the manuals, not as complete, but nevertheless, to understand what do you have to put in there. You have also at the right side of the boxes sometimes the arrows up and down. So in some cases, we are already giving you the elements of choice. So there are a certain number of building types that level is covering, therefore also CAD is covering. The number of countries is limited in general, so you can't invent one. So you provide a basic information. Only a few of these elements are obligatory. Nevertheless, this is the starting point here, how to identify your project, and the system is storing this with the project name so that you can find it again when you leave the system and you enter again. Next slide, please. Now, we are looking for a number of building elements, not everything. So there are systems in place with a higher complexity. We do not think that for levels in particular, keeping in mind how much time you have to invest into it, you should look into too many elements here. So we are looking at the ones that are the most likely ones to affect the performance of the building. And here you can also select which of the elements you actually want to use. And the system is then automatically only providing these boxes again to put information in for the elements that you have selected. Today, we are going for the sanitary systems. So we have here clicked. I'm not showing you through it because otherwise it will take much more time. And in the next slide, you see the that you can actually choose your levels, and you can choose it for everything, for every indicator, wherever you like. The only point here is you can't choose a level and you calculate the whole thing, and then you choose another level and try to then compare these different parts. So please keep in mind the level should be consistent. Next slide, please. And with this, we start with level 1. Level 1 is, as it was said, de facto description of your activities, of your intentions, and the actions that you have taken. So in reality, it's a checklist, a tick box de facto that you have to use. Again, you can change it whenever you need it. However, this remains practically a relatively simple tool. Only on level 2, on the next slide, we are actually going into more complex aspects. You have data. So level 1 would be, you just mentioned, for example, that you have rainwater storage and you use it for the water consumption. Here you have more the possibilities of having manufacturer data. You include certain usage data factors. Some of them are already given in the manual, so you also don't have to invent all of these elements here. As you can see, also we have already the possibilities of identifying rainfall when you come to rainwater collection. We have the regions, which also means a little bit water consumption, water scarcity is included here. And we have the point of how many days per year are this building used. In reality, if it's a residential building, de facto most of the time, but there might be restrictions that might be interesting for your calculation. And again, there is information, you can click on it and you get more information out of it, what to put in here. So we are not leaving you here alone and saying, well, find out or read the manual before that. So the manual is that Levels is providing is helping, but we have tried here to avoid that you always have to jump back and forth between the two systems. Next slide, please. This is de facto then the starting point of the previous page. We are coming here to the point that you have irrigation levels, you have a number of occupants, and with this you can practically run an assessment of what is the water consumption actually in the building on a yearly basis. So here you are working with design information. So this is what you got from the information of the products that you have used. On the next slide, we are moving, we are still in levels 2. So you get practically the calculation here of the water uses as such. But this is now your first design. Now you change a little bit certain applications. You use, for example, a different dishwasher. You go for more information for the occupants. So you hope that this will reduce your water consumption, for example, and you can put additional 2 scenarios in there to check which one is the best version. Water consumption as such alone is not, of course, not very helpful for you as a designer or for a building owner and for a building manager. There are more factors together, but with the different scenarios, you can see, okay, what is the trade-off between the different parts and what would then provide with the best results. Next slide, please. And with this, we come to the part where we're going for level 3. Level 3 is the design phase is over. We have already finished the building. Now we have the water meter and we can check actually what is happening here. So we have here is not filled in, but you see at the end of the picture, level 2 estimate. So that was the starting point, your calculations, your assumptions. Level 3 is you put in the real output of the whole thing. So the real water consumption. And here you can then actually compare a little bit what has changed from this design phase. In reality, it should be, there will be differences, but it helps then to do a reassessment of the building up to a certain extent from the good parts or the negative parts that have happened. Next slide, please. We are coming to a part where I really ask for your feedback. As I mentioned before, we are talking here, levels has changed and new elements have been taken into consideration, in particular from taxonomy, but from other policy and regulatory steps too. And the same applies now after the manuals and the structure of levels has been updated for CAT. So CAT will change on one hand because of these requirements that are making some of the indicators to be adapted. But on the other hand, I'm also looking for you as practitioners, as people who are using CAT in providing information, because in the last 2-3 years, we have collected quite a lot of information on people saying, well, this has worked, or is this possible, or why can I not do this? And quite often is you can't do it because, as I said, we tried with a rather simple approach at the beginning, and we are now improving the document. So if there is something in your experience that would say that would help me to use levels better, or I haven't used levels because this is lacking and I would need this actually to do this, please provide us with the information, send it to the help desk. This is always helping. And in 2025, we are putting this together for a new structure of levels to make it even better for your professional use. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manfred, for this deep dive into the calculation and assessment tool. And we collected a couple of questions, Manfred, and I'm going to use also the opportunity of having you back to maybe also bring in some of the earlier received questions for you. But let's maybe start with the first one. And it's a similar question to what we've asked Estelle as well. How regularly does the Commission plan to upgrade the cuts?
Well, with a technical tool, it's a little bit more difficult. So we don't want to create too much disturbance that somebody who is in the middle of the calculation suddenly finds out actually what I've done so far is no longer feasible here. So we were careful so far in the last 2-3 years in only correcting obvious mistakes that the system doesn't work. So in reality, also CAT will only adapt whenever levels as such is changing, and also bigger changes like the possibilities of printouts, etc., will come exactly with one batch. It's also a little bit the point, of course, as a public administration, we have to calculate quite ahead, and it's also the taxpayers' money, so we are not trying to do small things left, right, and center, but more or less to have one big step where everybody who is using CAT also gets the message in advance that something is changing, be aware of that these things, and then giving precise indication what is changing so that everybody can adapt to it. So de facto, the idea is in 2026, there will be then a new version, but then there will be a lot of pre-warning so that everybody can adjust on time.
Oh, very good. So indeed, so nothing gets lost in the process. So that's very good. And then there's a question of why is there an option for selecting building elements in the cut?
Well, this is, let's say, mostly for the part when it comes to resource efficiency outside water. So in reality, the construction sector is one of the most resource intensive sectors. Also then when it comes to creating waste, the volume is enormous. So actually building elements are on one hand better tackled because we have sometimes technical standards for specific building elements. So you have all the information already standardized, the indicators and the units in how to measure it. The second part is it's normally a little bit easier because these are also in the design phase or in the construction phase specific elements that can be identified. So therefore, it makes sense to speak in the same language like quite a lot of the design and the construction work is actually done. It's not so interesting for the building manager per se, no? But it's for the design and the construction phase.
Okay, yeah, no, thank you for that. And then also maybe linking it to also earlier points that Estelle was making. So since levels does not provide thresholds or is also not a classification scheme, are any reference values included in the CAT to help determine whether the indicator value we calculated reflects good or poor performance?
Here it would be even worse than in levels itself if we would do this, no? Because we are talking about 27 EU member states, and even outside the EU it can be used. So therefore, trying to catch up with all possibilities here and put them into the system would be a continuous upgrades for which we don't have the resources in the first place. But also there is a higher risk that something goes wrong here. No? So that would be something in the translation was missing, and you get threshold levels that are in reality no longer valid or should be interpreted in a slightly different way. So this is left to the scheme providers in the private sector or the national level, how to do the translation and the conversion factor from the levels into what is our intended target.
Okay, so and I think it's good to also manage the expectations in that regard. The next question goes a little bit to the underlying foundation of the CAT. So, what is the database of the tool? So, what is underneath?
Well, underneath is practically the specific data of the users themselves. So we ourselves have only practically provided the reporting and calculation format as such. So the whole thing is within the Commission. So it's one of our databases. And yeah, maybe for everybody who is joining for this, as I said before, we are only checking when you are entering the system, when you register yourself to use CAT. We are only looking for the profession and the member states so that we can see if we are missing certain target groups and we are creating gaps, or certain target groups are not interested in it, because then it means we have also somewhere a conceptual problem in doing this. Otherwise, there is no data stored. This is the only thing we have for data protection reasons. We are not going deeper into this. And as I said, all the data, again, it's a question of management and keeping the database. If data is not used after 2 years, it vanishes completely from the system without a trace.
Okay, no, I think that's also interesting, of course, for people to know when they provide the data. So thank you very much. And then following up maybe a little bit on that, and also again of what's maybe been said earlier, will the CAT be the tool to calculate the life cycle global warming potential for the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive? Or can it be?
To be honest, right now I would be skeptical about this. We are following de facto, as I said before, everything that is coming from levels, and levels intentionally was not trying to duplicate or overlap with the EPBD. So we are not overdoing a system. And again, we are talking here about the taxpayers' money. What seems nice or would look nice is not necessarily something that is absolutely important here. And to be honest, I would consider then CAT much more as a competition to other systems, which is creating more confusion than actually helping. So we are staying strictly with the framework of levels, and we are not introducing something outside. So it's really focused on one specific approach here. And whenever, so that we are not inventing the wheel as a parallel system to the original levels. So that's completely off limits for us.
Okay, no, very good. And then just another question, I think that came in from your response to the previous question on the database and the data storage is whether it's possible to export the results as a report from the CAT, Is it possible, or will it be possible?
It's unfortunately not possible today. To be honest, as I said, we were not really expecting that this is needed, but it's coming as questions. So it's not the first time that we have heard it, and it's on our to-do list for the future upgrades. So yes, we are planning to do this. I can't promise that we are doing this, but it's definitely on our to-do list in seeing, okay, this would be something that has raised several questions and obviously interest in the public that this is possible.
Okay, so one of the future upgrades. No, thank you very much. And then again, a bit more specific question also on the data. So can product data from the digital product passport automatically be entered in CAT, or is this planned as well, maybe?
Well, today we don't have the digital product passport as such. However, yes, it's planned. I mean, this is exactly the point that all of these different systems should be as compatible as possible. So we are talking starting from the digital building logbook to other information tools at EU level and national level. So whatever is coming from the digital product passport should also then be available for cuts. This is, let's say, then one of the advantages that CAT is not inventing the wheel again, but providing quite a lot of information that the manufacturer is providing already into the system. But again, we are talking here about the upgrades, not the current system right now.
Yeah. No, thank you very much. And then I do take the opportunity to make was still one or two questions from the previous session where you also had your presentation, and we didn't manage to capture those. One was, will levels be relevant for the construction products regulation acquis and the work on standards?
Yes and no. It will not be directly responsible. I mean, construction products is construction products, and they are fulfilling a certain need in design. However, again, we have tried to avoid that we are duplicating, overlapping, creating gaps between different policies. So when levels was already there, the new construction products regulation, as it was decided this year, is already taking levels elements into account. However, level says this is the target for sustainable building. This can reflect in product information. And this is an ongoing work right now in the standardization process to ensure that new standards for construction products are including also sustainability aspects that were previously not included. And therefore, levels is one of the let's say, lighthouses in where to go, what information is needed. But let's say it's not saying exactly a cut and paste from a levels indicator into a construction products indicator, but the basic principle that for the calculation in cut and in levels as such, the information of a construction product should be useful. And therefore, again, coming back to the question of the digital product passport, the information that is there should also then easily be put into levels without any additional adaptation and adaptation costs.
Yeah, very good. So I think that's indeed the baseline harmonization. I think it's a really good point to make. And last question, which stages are included in the LCA of levels, and particularly is D stage included?
To be honest, I'm a little bit lost with the question.
That's quite all right. So I think it's a bit of an understanding of the typical life cycle assessment. Is there a particular focus on parts or particular parts of this life cycle assessment and levels, or is it covering the whole broad range?
That might be easier for Estelle to reply. My personal point here is we are talking here about life cycle thinking in general, and practically, again, we are not inventing the wheel again. So a lot of this is based on international and European standards as such. So and we are making the references all the time to the specific standards. So therefore, I do not see a problem in general. It's more really at the design level. What are you doing and which parts of the life cycle are you actually focusing on? and to use the information here. The question seems for me a little bit too general to say, okay, that's exactly how to treat this in levels or in a specific building assessment.
Thank you. I think see Estelle maybe want to do a quick addition to that as well, if possible. No, she disappeared, but we'll also maybe keep it otherwise for later. Thank you, Manfred. We do have a quick break. It's only 5 minutes where we just invite everybody to maybe stretch your legs, get something as a refreshment. We will in the background play the levels video. So if you don't feel the need to move around, do stay and watch the video, and we'll be back at 11:55 Central European Time. Have a quick break, everybody. Thank you very much. For those of you that follow the video, it's a very nice, short visual introduction into levels as well. So thank you and welcome back to the third and last part of today's online conference. We're really moving levels on the ground. We have with us Dr. Anna Braune, who is the initiator and founding CEO of the German Sustainable Buildings Council, and is now responsible for GGMB's Research and Development Department. She's going to give us an insight into more Life to Levels project, which gives really more information on how Levels is working on the ground. So Anna, floor is yours. I invite everybody else, of course, for questions through the Q&A function, because we will have a last round of Q&A after this presentation. Anna.
Yeah, thank you so much, Katharina. So you have seen how Levels works, what is inside Levels, how you can use the CAD tool, how you can learn how to use Levels and learn more about the content. And now it's about learning from projects. We have the honor to be part of European funded projects. It's called More Life to Levels. Our project deals with practical examples and generating case studies on a variety of building projects. Next slide, please. The project team, as usual in European funded projects, consists of people from different countries. In our case, it's from Denmark, Germany, Austria, and Spain. It's green building councils working together on this European project. This is a photo of our last meeting in Copenhagen, where we met a month ago in Copenhagen. And the project runs since May 23 and will continue to May 2027. The project team is aiming at getting a harmonized and thorough understanding of how Levels is applied, and especially throughout different building technology typologies across Europe. So we look at finding out on case studies and real life conditions of, we said, at least 11 building projects. Currently we have 11 building projects, and we are very happy that the real life building projects support us in delivering data and in filling out surveys, but to this I come later. We also want to not only generate these case studies, for which we give the content at the end of the project to the European Commission, but we also want to provide practical knowledge from the project participants. So by also tracking all the questions that come up during using the use of Levels, and tracking it in an internal social media or social platform, we have decided and proposed in the project to provide the answers and the questions, and also the answers to these very practical application questions to the outside world, and I'll show you in a minute that how this exchange hub works. Next slide, please. Of course, we are following a methodology. We had to select projects first, which took a little while, because we really wanted not to have a project selection that focuses on the typical buildings only, but also on to really have a good representation. Then, of course, we had to harmonize also the timings, and I mean, that's real life building projects, and If you have ever been part of a project, you know that the timing is quite difficult very often, but the harmonization of the information to be collected, and then that we log the data and get information, and not only data but information on the projects. Then we are generating reporting formats on how to communicate on the results, because it's more than just the numbers that come out. And of course, we have a strict monitoring and governance process. So it's all about also dealing with the data security questions, but also on the help and getting information from one point to the other. Next slide, please. And as typical, we have defined work packages. And on this slide, you can see that we not only have project management and coordination as a work package, and then we prepare the activities in work package 2 and follow up with the building projects, collect data and report. But also we had to consider the 3 levels of levels. So it's all about getting levels into this project sort of flow. We also have an advisory board, external advisory board, supporting us with questions, but also links to other initiatives. And since this project is not aiming at doing it, solely for the participants and the building projects themselves, but also for the external world outside. So we generated this community, we call it community of apprenticeship. So people outside who can learn from the findings and practical findings throughout the entire project phase. So not only at May 2027, as I said, but in between, we will deliver relevant information that we get from the practical application of levels. Next slide, please. The buildings we selected come from or are located in 6 countries: Austria, Denmark, Germany, Hungary, Italy, and Spain. The countries marked here are the countries where our councils are located. The councils and the project members, by the way, are all green building councils working with the DGNB framework, and the Spanish council is working with the Verde certification scheme as well. So DGNB system, certification system, and Verde. And therefore, we also could find other building projects in other countries. So it's currently 11 projects in total. 5 office buildings, 1 collective residential building, 3 education institutes, and 3 mixed use, which is very typical to not have a single use type in a building, but that mixed use are very often, in cities, the most typical way of building, especially in the inner cities. Also, we have 5 existing buildings, 2 renovations, and 4 new buildings, so we can apply levels in these different stages. And therefore, 6 projects can report on all 3 levels. 3 projects can report on level 2 and 3 only, because they started later, and it would be it's not really fitting to ask level 1 because they are already in the execution phase. And 2 projects which are existing can report on level 3 only. But only is, there's a lot of information also coming, of course, from level 3. Next slide, please. In order to give you a little bit of an overview of how the buildings look like, you can find it on our project website. There's just a screenshot of most of them, but next slide, you can also dive into more details. Next slide, please, of each project. So you can get some information, some more pictures on the projects themselves that we look at. So I invite you just to get on the website and, if you're interested, get more information on the projects. Next slide, please. The data information, so you saw the cut tool, you saw the how people can be trained on levels, but in this case we had to choose a little bit a different way of dealing with it. Of course, we invited all project members to go through the training of levels, but we had also country-specific trainings in the languages, also how to apply it while using while working on a DGNB certificate, for example. And then we generated surveys which go beyond the levels reporting, pure number, I would say pure number and information reporting, but also into more a question of the project and workflow planning, on the motivation and expectation to use levels, which is the phase 1, the preliminary survey with which we start. So an initial questionnaire that is being handed over to the has been handed over to all project teams. Then in phase 2, it's all about the levels building data and the levels reporting and building data. So detailed information on the buildings, and also level 1, level 2, level 3 questionnaires, which we had to generate new, because as you heard, the cut tool is we could not use it because the export is function is not yet there. And then we have in phase 3 the final and reflective survey, where it sums up the project and the use of levels, the experiences, how the value, if value was created, which we hope, on the influence of decision making throughout the processes. So the final questionnaire is really asking for the experiences of using levels. Next slide, please. And of course, we use a survey instrument, as you can see it here. So people using it from the building project teams are, we guide them through, all the different indicators, the levels, they have their dates, they know exactly when to report. And because with 11 projects, 3 surveys, and of which one is in different stages. On the next slide, you can see that this is quite, we have to really organize the data flows and generate templates that are handed over to the right people in the right time. And then we need a rigor view on the data and information, and on the we have to find out, sometimes it's that people report data which is or information which just cannot be, and then we have to find out why is that, and it's sometimes a typo, error, or misunderstanding. So we have a technical committee looking at the information only. As you can imagine, a lot of information has to be dealt with. On the next slide, you can see that for the different building projects, which are in different stages, starting points, final points, we had to find the right time to report on the different surveys and levels. And as you can see, this is a quite complex but a way to deal with this. It's part of the project to really remind the people that they have now a specific time to report on a specific survey. We always want to use synergies as much as possible, but of course it's not always feasible. Next slide, please. In order to give answers to specific questions the people have in the project, we have generated 2 social intranet groups on a website that is provided by DGNB, by us. It's called My DGNB. It's a social intranet where we could generate a secure group for the project participants only, and an open group for people learning from what the project's participants went through. And as an example, for the inner group, the one that is closed, we have answered questions on, for example, how to calculate the useful area, where can I find more information on the heating and cooling degree days, where's good information available on radon risks in the different countries, but then also very specific questions on how to deal with a specific energy law and the levels reporting format, or practical questions. What does EEE mean in the bill of quantities? And to answer some of these questions, or something like what can I do if I only have GWP total and no fossil and biogenic. We have generated an internal group, and the most relevant information goes then into the external group. It's really learning from the projects, and it will not, of course, replace any Q&A or official answer from the commission or from the people who are responsible for the development of levels, but it's only on answers that we could provide, or help that we could provide for the building projects, and that seem to be relevant for other people working with levels as well. So you're invited to join this group as well. There's only one registration needed, and that's it. So, and now I come to my last part, so on the communication and news. So I cannot give you a data information yet, because it's still in an early phase. But if you're interested in learning more on the project, why we're doing it, what are we doing on reports that we have already handed over to the commission as well. We have a LinkedIn group as well, and on the Exchange Hub. And if you want to know even more, then on the very last slide, you can find it's the dissemination strategies. Yeah, so at the end, it's all about communication and learning from the 11 projects. Our colleagues are helping us, and Alphonse Ventura, he is from the Green Building Council España as the project manager, and I'm sort of the technical person responsible for the project itself. Thank you for, if you want to know more, just contact us.
Thank you, Anna, and also thank you for providing those contact details for those interested. Before we move into the Q&A session with Anna, I want to also point you to the fact that, of course, we couldn't capture and pick up all of the questions in the Q&A sessions, but if you go to the Q&A panel, you will find that some of the ones that we couldn't answer verbally in our discussion with the speakers, we did answer in writing. So do have a look at the Q&A panel, and maybe look for the questions and the answers there that interest you. Now, turning to you, Anna, I would like to start with the first question from the audience to understand: is there a test project showing the life cycle global warming potential performance of a building you can talk about? So level 1 design, level 2 input data, and so on. So is there a test project showing the life cycle global warming potential performance?
They are all doing it, but we have promised to send all information first, of course, to the commission. So our project is about generating content for case studies, which will at the end be provided by the ones, by the commission itself. So we are not publishing the data and information through the project website here, but we're generating information and data for hopefully nice case studies at the end of the project. So I'm not able to provide you information on this now.
No, okay. So we can say the comment was that it would be really helpful, but of course we understand that there is a certain procedure to follow. So, and we will go with that. A second question is, can you provide us the platforms you're using for the live project? So where can I find information? You did that, but maybe you want to show the slide again that goes to the levels team. With the links to the project and the resources. So maybe we could just have that slide back up so people can respond to that, and maybe also put that in the Q&A link. So just my colleagues, if we could move back to the slides, a few slides back with the information on the contact. Not, yeah, yep, that one. Perfect.
Yeah.
One more back to the yes, that one. So here we have that answer. Maybe I don't know if you still want to outline what exactly you can find where, so people can find their way around.
Yeah, I think especially the one on the bottom will be of interest at a later stage of time. We are constantly filling up this information or exchange hub. It's an open one with really like practical answers from the project participants. So without saying, that this specific project had a problem in finding this and that, this is happening in an internal group, but it's like, if you are located in Germany and you don't know how to map the German energy law with the levels reporting, levels indicator number XYZ, then this might help you. So it's really a very practical information. And we have, since the project teams are currently working on level 2 reporting, so level 1 reporting is really super simple. There's not many questions coming up because it's the simplicity of the instrument itself. But on level 2, of course, it gets to all the numbers and figures and methods that are to be used. And now it becomes there will come more information. On the other hand side, I think it might be less questions being answered throughout these 11 building projects here, because they are already used to work with certification schemes where they can find additional information. So this project is not so much on generating, an FAQ and user experiences to get everything back, but it's really about getting the case studies for the 11 buildings. And that the good thing is that people are trained on the one hand side on levels, but on the other hand side, they all bring their certification experience with them.
And because you already mentioned that, do you train the practitioners before they use the levels framework?
Actually, we have trained them already, and they did not know that we train them on levels as well, because since levels is well aligned with the DGNB system, only few elements were new to them. So, of course, I mean, the DGNB system uses, of course, the results of life cycle assessment. We have a resource passport that people should fill in, water indicators, which should be below benchmarks, calculated nearly exactly in the same way like levels does it. We ask for climate risk analysis, life cycle cost benchmarks, and so on. So for them, it seems like all new, sometimes a bit different from. It's not new to them because it's all integrated, and therefore, but they don't know actually that they already learned how to use levels, and now it's just a way of applying the methods and reporting against the levels into this levels reporting format, I would call it like this. So we do trainings on all the content. It is very there's a lot of interest in trainings. That's what I can say in general on sustainability issues. Upskilling is the the big thing to do. We do it a little bit underground, that it's not just said, yeah, now you have the levels training, because it's usually people want to understand how to improve their sustainability in total, and then we train everything, and levels is included.
And you already highlighted that in the in levels 1, there were maybe less questions and less open points from the practitioners that you're working with. But are there some general feedback on how the reporting for them with levels is perceived or is working?
Let me think. So on levels 1, it is, I mean, the main idea of level 1 is to plant or to get seeds for sustainability into the design phase. So to ask the right questions. And this is what level 1 is all about, to really find a way that the building practitioners talk about specific topics that they usually do not talk about in a very early time building, or planning stage. So it's like, have you considered doing this and that, instead of how many variants did you calculate to do this and that? So it's really about, have you considered using materials with a lower carbon footprint? Have you considered using building more compact? Have you considered reducing your water amount in the use stage, or have you considered using gray water? So it's a little bit guiding into more sustainable solutions. People can say, no, I don't want to do this. I have considered, but I'm not doing it. And then they should note it down. But for those who already said, oh yeah, that's a good idea, I should talk to the rest of the team, and now we're considering it, and then you can see improvements. And then, people say, write down, yes, we have considered using materials with a lower carbon intensity, and we use this and this and this, or we plan to use this and this for the building structure, for example. And this is all about getting the communication on sustainability in early project stages. I really like the approach of level 1, by the way, as a practitioner.
Thank you. And then maybe final question from my side, or from the audience actually, and maybe a difficult one to answer, but well, maybe from your background as practitioner, but also of course working with practitioners, how much additional work time are you estimating for project to use levels?
That's a difficult one. Because it's not for granted. So the sorting of information in a way that the levels, indicators, and sub-indicators are being asked requires a good way of maybe dealing how to get the information from the building project. So since it's not, as you could see, since it's not 16 indicators, but also a subset of indicators and information put into different tiers as well, it's of course a lot more information, but all the substructuring is supposed to help you identifying the hotspots for sustainability. So the more, I don't know if you know this, but the garbage in, garbage out. So if you have information on a super, super high level only, then nobody is able to improve a building design. So the more specific you have the information available, the better, of course, you can improve. The time, especially for the substructuring, is in these cases quite high if you are not using, I would say, advanced and already linked and mapped data structures. So this, and then it can become quite high of a burden to do this. If you use levels maybe in a way that you say, I use the methods, And I'm not so much looking into the substructures. It is a much lower, much lower effort to do so.
Okay. Thank you very much, Anna, for the presentation, but also, of course, for answering these other questions. I want to now, moving to the wrap-up of today's conference, I want to thank all speakers of today's conference for providing us with the foundations, the policy framework, the introductions to levels, but also, of course, also the different tools that are at hand, different resources, the different manuals and the like. And then, of course, also lastly, Anna, for the first practical sharing of experiences. And there will be more, of course, in the future. So thanks to all of the speakers, thanks to all of you as the participants of today, also for posing your questions. We are very much aware that we couldn't cover all of them, but we hope to still have given you a good view on levels and the different possibilities it has. I want to thank the colleagues from the European Commission and, of course, my colleagues from the Levels team and the organizers of the webinar in the background. We hope that this webinar has fulfilled your expectations, but we would also like to know a little bit more from you, and it would be really great if you could get out your phone one last time and scan this QR code for a quick feedback survey. We will have more of these levels events in the future, so your feedback is really useful because it helps us shape the next upcoming events. Also, please do not forget to join the LinkedIn group. And of course, have a look and visit the website, the Levels website. The links and also the information have been provided in the Q&A panel, but also you can find them here on the slide again. So please fill in the survey and of course stay connected with Levels and of course the subject that Level represents. So for me and from my side, thank you very much for today's online conference, and we hope to see you soon in one of the next Levels events. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.